For people existing behind bars, in prisons, and jails, phone calls can be a lifeline, particularly in the era of COVID, as visits have been seriously limited and can be impossible if you don't have access to a car, you're working 2 jobs, but those calls can come at a steep cost.
For me to call my family, it cost me over $3 a phone call. You know what I mean? And it's like now me and my family are ending up spending $400 or $500 a month. Believe it or not, it puts a stress on relationships with other people when you call them and they don't have the money.
I know a girl right now that just for her to call, because she have 2 baby sisters, to call one of them just to know how they doing, she has to pick whether she wants deodorant, toothpaste, or phone call.
An impossible choice for many incarcerated people and their families, which is why New York City lawmakers voted to make inmate calls free in 2018, later followed by San Francisco and San Diego. And in July, Connecticut voted to become the first state in the country to drop the phone call fees in all of its prisons. But that's Connecticut. So local advocates are pushing for fully free calls here too. In a bill on Beacon Hill, it's called Keeping Families Connected, which would also make video calls and other electronic communication free. I'm joined now by 2 of those leading this charge. Leslie Credle is the Executive Director of Justice for Housing and a founding member of the Building Up People, Not Prisons Coalition. And Bonnie Tenneriello is a staff attorney with Prisoners Legal Services of Massachusetts. Bonnie and Leslie, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Leslie, can I start with you? A few people in those recordings were talking about $300, $400, $500 a month that families are having to pay to stay in touch. Is that typical?
Yes, it is. I myself, I spent up to $360, sometimes $400 a month. My family spent to communicate with myself while I was held and incarcerated.
And how critical was that for you when you were apart from them? How critical was it, not just for them, but for you?
Mm-hmm. Well, as a mother, you know, just because you go to prison doesn't mean that you start being a parent. You know, we're still mothers. We still have children that we worry about. 80% of the women who are incarcerated are parents, are mothers. And that connection, having to parent from jail, is crucial for the child and for the mother. So myself, I had to. My daughter was in college. My son was just becoming to be on his own as a young gentleman. So keeping that connection and making sure that they were safe, that's the one thing that you worry about, your parental intuition as a mother. Sure. I don't care how old your children get, you always worry about them. Mm-hmm. So it was vital for me to speak to my kids and my loved ones and my family every day.
And they don't need you any less either. I mean, it's not just a one-way street. It's obviously a two-way street. You might even argue they need you more. Bonnie, the proposal on Beacon Hill is to make all these kinds of communications free. Am I right about that?
That's absolutely right. To lift the burden that Leslie was just describing from all these families.
And my understanding is some of the sheriffs, some of the counties have implemented a plan where at least the first X number of minutes, the first few minutes is free. Is that actually happening, or what's the status of that?
Right now, I believe that they're under their current contracts, people get 10 minutes a week free. And if you heard what Leslie was just saying, and you imagine trying to just keep in touch with a kid in 10 minutes a week, that's nothing.
You know, Leslie, I read this morning that a stunning number, which won't surprise you, it just surprised me, 3% of the kids in this country have a parent who is currently incarcerated. More than 10% of black kids in this country have a parent who's incarcerated. And I'm assuming that the average income of such a family is such that a lot of them don't even have cars or transportation to get out to a facility to see a parent. Is that fair? Is that accurate?
That is true. You know, the DOC capitalizes off of families who also, when loved one goes to prison, you lose one source of revenue. So
Of course,
I,
right.
the revenue from my family. So when you lose that one parent, that's a source of revenue. So if you don't have that parent providing, you're really struggling to keep your household. And so for them to capitalize off of people who are already struggling to pay their bills, pay their mortgage, keep a child in college, is typical of the Department of Corrections. They do not have any empathy or humanity around these social issues. It's all about business.
I want to get to the business aspect of this in a minute. I worry, Bonnie, that a lot of the public doesn't have a lot of empathy. There's not a huge constituency. I mean, I'm sure you hear all the time, well, the solution for this is don't commit crimes and you don't have to worry about that, which is not exactly solve problems. For those who don't care about the individuals involved, don't care about the kids left behind, there's some hard and convincing data about what impact of these kinds of telephonic communications have on issues like recidivism, which I assume the average person does care about, correct?
Absolutely. Studies have shown consistently that family contact is key to success when you go back from prison to the community. And if we care about our communities, if we care about our tax bills, this should matter to us because we pay on average somewhere around $70,000 a year for every person we send back to prison. So it's common sense. When you look at the cost of depriving people of this basic level of humane contact with their families in dollars and cents, even if you don't care about those people, right. It's cheap. It's not going to cost that much money to provide these calls.
Bonnie, I want to stay on dollars and cents for a minute. It seems to me, as an outsider on this issue, one of the reasons why the legislature hasn't moved on this yet is because the sheriffs have a pretty powerful lobby, and the sheriffs make a lot of money off these calls. The companies, and I understand there are 2 or 3 companies around the country, that is private companies, I should say, that control virtually all of these phone operations, and they kick back, not illegally, I want to be clear, they kick back hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases to these facilities. So one of the things I worry about when I was reading about this is if these calls are made free and these phone companies don't kick back revenue to sheriffs, they're going to go to the same legislators who have to vote on your bill and say, you got to make me whole. You got to use taxpayer money to fund the things that I was using these phone fees to pay for. That's the reality, isn't it?
That's what they're saying. It's not justified.
Why isn't it justified?
Okay, let's say from 2014 to 2019, average daily population in the prisons went down, in the counties, that is, went down close to 20%. During that same period, their budgets increased 15.7%. Their operational budgets, they're bloated. And they spend, and they say, the ironic thing is they say they need these commissions, these kickbacks, as you rightly call them, though they are legal. They say they need it to provide programs and treatment. First of all, we don't know what they're doing with this money because there's no accountability. What we've seen in their budgets is they spend around 3% on programs and treatment. So they're bloated. We don't know how they're using the money. And also, how ironic to say we're going to take money from these low-income communities, largely communities of color, and we're gonna provide treatment to our incarcerated people when connecting with your family is probably the single most humane, most important way that people survive in prison.
Leslie, do you find, am I being unduly pessimistic about how the general public feels about issues like this? And we all like to say we're pro-family. We all care about kids. My radio colleague says, you know, it's for the children is always the last refuge of scoundrels. They say it and they don't believe it. Is there a constituency for this? Or is this just a ridiculously uphill fight, do you think?
No, particularly, you know, Black and brown communities are underfunded, over-policed. Therefore, the resources are not going to the community. If you're constantly being targeted and by policing every day, there's going to be a majority of minorities in prison because that's the way the system is built, and it comes from slavery. It's comes from way back Jim Crow era, and it's still going on today. So incarcerating Black and brown individuals is a business. Our bodies are for profit for the carceral system, and this is why I do the work that I do. We have to break that systemic oppression in our communities and bring the resources from policing and prisons back into the communities where they belong, to fund grassroots organizations like Family for Justice Healing, and so that we can do the work to provide what different looks like in the community. Mental health, substance abuse doesn't belong in a prison. It belongs getting help for our community who has been deprived resources for so long.
Well, I wish you success in your campaign. I can't think of anything more important to keep a family together as best you can when they're apart. Leslie, Bonnie, thank you for your work and thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.